Are you playing with destructible terrain? So you're jumping into Battletech. You've got your mechs. Next jump to combined arms, tank, infantry, air support, artillery, looking at the various missions. But then once you jump into Citytech, Cityfight, you start to see rules where buildings can be destroyed. Things can be transformed into rubble. The various terrain factors of not only elevation and depth in terms of water and moving, but interacting with things to essentially blow them up. How does that play into the narrative? And is that something that we can utilize to kind of not only make the game a little more interesting, but make the game a little bit more tactical with what you can do? For me, it's a matter of kind of time. How much time do we have to play a game of Battletech? And I think this is one of the great things about the rule set, where you can play just game of armored combat. We can just do mechs. All terrain is just kind of there. So if there's a building and I shoot at it and it gets hit by things, the idea it might be on fire or crumbling. But in terms of game terms, the rules don't change. You can play with those basic core rules and have an awesome Battletech experience. And many times at the club, if we don't have a ton of time to play, or if we're there for kind of some board game stuff and we played that, and then we'll do a little bit of Battletech too, kind of half and half, 50-50, then keeping it simple, fluid, streamlined, absolutely. But if we've got some more time, and if we want to add in some more units, then I do like to add in the destructible rules. And I find kind of the first time you play that, to have a little kind of printed out sheet. I've got a sheet of paper that explains some of those rules. And then I think it's important, just so there's no misunderstandings, of how are we going to play these rules? Meaning, here's the city fight. We set up the city. It's got forests. Can you burn down the forests? Can you set them on fire? Yes, if that happens, we replace it with a smoke token, and it represents that hex. Moving into that hex, this happens, heat happens, that happens. These buildings, what are their structure points? These buildings, how many elevations? Is there a basement? Are there hidden basements? I prefer playing with hidden basements. How does that work out? What are we going to define as roads? If we're playing with the road rules, then you could possibly slip depending on how fast that you're moving. Hovers too could skim. How do those aspects? And when something is destroyed, is it removed from play? I mean, technically in the narrative, it's rubble, but do we just remove it from play and it's considered cosmetic? Or does it get replaced with some rubble and it means something else? So I find just a quick review, that's how it works. Now, if you're part of a regular, this is kind of a sidebar, if you're part of a regular gaming group, these things come organically. We play every week. We kind of know what we're doing. So I won't call them house rules because you have a player personality of how you play. But likewise, if it's a new group or we've got some new players, like, hey, before we deploy, mission set, lance is set, before we deploy and pick sides, let's just kind of go over the hex map. So I have an understanding and you have an understanding. I think that's important to populate your tactica. Now, playing with destructibles, again, in a bigger game, because it's going to take a little bit longer, I enjoy it. You're behind a building, you're holding out, you're returning fire, 2 demolisher tanks roll up, levels that building. You got to find a new place to redeploy. It's not a retreat. We're redeploying. Likewise, jumping up on a building and having it get blown up with indirect fire and things like that. And then you fall through 3 or 4 floors plus a basement, trying to climb out, crawl out, pilot checks. All sorts of crazy stuff happens. Setting fire to woods and areas that can burn, some structures too, and watching that spread. It adds the map, takes the hex map or the tabletop, whatever we're playing on, and making it a little bit more interactive. So I would recommend it. I recommend it to explore that, to add it to your Battletech, your MechWarrior toolkit, as you plot out and plan the game you want to play, trying it out or having it at an advantage, and realize, like, I don't want to say optional rules, additional rules, it is very much plug and play with the battle that you want to have.